Hello, I'm Ashley Benton. I'm the Deaf and Deafblind Service Coordinator with the North Carolina Division of Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. Today we have a video interview with MJ. MJ is going to talk about deaf people with dementia. She has shared her experiences as a caregiver for her mother who has dementia. I'm really so excited that you're here with us today, MJ. MJ Grant is a CODA child of a deaf adult. She is from Maine. She's a sign language interpreter. So thank you for joining us today, MJ.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled you invited me. I appreciate having the opportunity to talk with you about this topic. It's important to spread awareness, so thank you.
My first question that I wanted to ask you was, when did you start noticing your mother had dementia? Were there any warning signs?
There were several signs. At first, it was really hard to tell exactly what was going on. For example, sometimes she got behind in her bills. She didn't pay for her oil, so she had no heat. She started to suspect that people were stealing. She became paranoid and afraid that people were stealing from her. There were several things like that. Her behavior was a little bit odd. I started noticing that she had greatly reduced her social activities. She became increasingly angry and frustrated, and that was tough. Around that same time, she was taking care of her own mother, my grandmother, who had dementia. That's when I started noticing that my mother was displaying some of the same signs. But it took a while for me to realize that she was actually forgetting things. And one thing I noticed was that she came to visit me here in Maine. And one day, she came into my house and she didn't know where she was. She was in my house and she was used to coming here. But that day something happened and she asked me, "Whose house is this?" And I started realizing that something was going on. That type of behavior started happening more often. That was around 2009, 2010. That was the initial stage. Then after that, the behaviors increased. She started having problems driving, she was forgetting more, and she became more confused. She started forgetting some signs. She would forget who people were. And she became extremely suspicious. And that was tough. That was frustrating for me because I couldn't understand why she suspected people of stealing from her. I did not realize at that time that she had dementia. That time was challenging. And then later we had her tested, but that's what dementia looked like in the beginning.
You and your mother had those conversations in the car. They've become quite famous. You started to film those. What made you start to think to record those? After sharing them with the public, what did you hope to gain from them?
I typically record a lot. That's just what I do. I love to preserve memories. And at that time, my mother had dementia, and my father was getting sicker too. So I decided to start recording both of them. First of all, I wanted to preserve memories of my parents. But I also wanted to be able to gauge the progression of their illnesses over time. So I started filming them on a regular basis. Now, it just so happened that on that day that video that went viral was shot, my mother and I had driven to the beach because Mom loved the beach. She loved to just sit in the car and look at the ocean. It was a beautiful sunny day. I put the camera on the dash and turned it on to film us in the car while we were having a conversation. The whole conversation lasted about 30 minutes, but I cut it before I posted the clip. When we were having our conversation, parked by the ocean, looking at the water, I noticed that my mom kept talking about MJ. She kept saying my name, MJ, over and over again. She was talking about me as if I wasn't there. She would talk about my sister and then MJ again, and I realized that she did not know that that was me. And that was around the first time that she didn't know who I was. There had been small instances of that before, but this was the first time that it was that pronounced. That's why I started to ask questions. When I asked her where MJ was, she said she didn't know and hadn't seen her in quite some time. That was surprising. I didn't want to embarrass her, so instead I decided to ask questions, hoping that she would come to realize the answer for herself. Instead of embarrassing her by telling her, I hoped that she would figure out for herself that MJ was me. Later in the conversation, she did realize it was me after I signed my father's name, Manny, and said he was my father. That was when she made the connection. And at that moment was beautiful because she lit up and she hugged me. She was thrilled because she thought she hadn't seen me in a long time. That moment was so beautiful and sweet. When I got home, I thought I would share the video with my friends so they could see my mom and share my journey. And I wanted her friends to see what was happening with her now. But I hadn't really thought about sharing the video for the purpose of spreading awareness. I hadn't really thought of that. My intention was just to share a moment of my life at that time. Then I added the captions. That was one of the first videos where I had added captions. When I posted that video and it went viral, it was completely unexpected and very surprising. Immediately, within just a few minutes, people were messaging me. There were so many messages that I was in shock to the point I felt paralyzed. I had not expected it to spread so quickly. It was a little scary. I wondered if people would be mad at me, if my family would be upset, if deaf people would resent my sharing this video about my deaf mother. I was worried that the deaf community would be mad at me. I worried about it the rest of that day. It was too late. The video was already out there. Then I realized that people were really being nice and supportive. I felt like the community could see my beautiful mother and that beautiful moment. And I realized that they had learned something too. Some people had commented that they had never seen dementia and didn't know what it looked like. And now they did. Some of my friends too didn't know what dementia looked like. And I was a little surprised. I thought most people knew more about dementia. I was familiar with it because I had grown up around different people with dementia. But then I realized what a powerful tool a video could be when you're sharing stories. It's so powerful. It was not my intent, but the result was wonderful and so positive.
Yes, they were truly touching.
Thank you.
Where's your mother now, and why? And as the caregiver for your mother, where are you in your journey?
Now Mom lives in a memory care home. It's near here, about 1 mile away. She is the only deaf person in a home with hearing people. But I took care of my mother in my home 3 different times. She moved in with me temporarily and then moved out. She moved back with me and stayed about a year, and then she moved into a memory care home. Then she moved back here and stayed almost 3 years. But luckily, she was here during the COVID pandemic, which was much better than if she had been in a nursing home. I cannot imagine having her in a nursing home during the pandemic. If she had been in a nursing home, I am sure that I would have brought her home to live with me again. I would not have been able to tolerate not being able to see my mother. I feel for those families that went through that. It did become stressful during the COVID pandemic while we were all at home with that feeling that we were in jail and stuck with one another with no breaks at all and no time for ourselves. Dealing with that every day while my mother's dementia worsened and her behaviors increased was difficult to take. After 3 years of that, this past spring, I started feeling mentally exhausted. I felt overcooked. It became too much. I had no me time at all. I felt like I was neglecting my kids because all my attention was focused on my mother. I was neglecting my husband because of my mom. I realized that it was impacting my whole family and that we were all beginning to suffer. It was a hard decision, but I'd reached the point where I was ready. I could not continue with the way things were. I felt so isolated. Now I understand how my mother felt when she was dealing with the same thing with her own mother. I understand and I feel for her, especially because her mother was hearing and my mother is deaf. My mother was isolated with very little support. Now I can compare that with me taking care of my mom. I know I have a world of support, and I appreciate that. I do. But when I look at the day-to-day responsibilities, at who was here and who was taking care of her daily needs, it was me alone. My husband had taken responsibility for our children and numerous other things, while I had taken on the responsibility of my mother. It was stressful for the whole family. Caregiving is hard on families. I will forever feel for people involved in caregiving. That's why I had to decide to move Mom to a brand new home that had just opened up. I wanted to move her in before it was full. I asked them to please hold a bed for my mother. I was ready. I felt ready. Fortunately, the home is brand new and near my home, so it's easy for me to go there regularly. I can go every day at any time. I had to go ahead and make a decision because of my own mental health. I was exhausted. Now I finally feel like I'm getting back to being myself. I'm getting my groove back. I'm back to being her daughter, to talking with her, having fun, and enjoying our conversations without the stress, which is much more enjoyable. But it's still hard. I feel a little guilty. I feel conflicted, especially since she is the sole deaf person in a home full of hearing people. It's complicated. She's isolated. You have to weigh your decisions, and that was the decision I had to make for my family.
Right. That's very common. When we make those types of decisions, we need to think about self care. If we don't care for ourselves, we'll be unable to care for others.
I agree, yes.
Other adult children that have deaf or hard of hearing parents and they're noticing those signs of dementia, what advice would you give to them?
The most important thing to do first is to become the POA, the power of attorney. It's important so that if your parent's illness progresses to the point that they can't make decisions, you're ready with the POA to make those decisions. So it's very important to have that POA in place. It really helps a lot. Second, I recommend that you contact an elder law attorney to ask questions about finances, about what you need to do, how to qualify for insurance, and what care the state will pay for. You need an attorney that specializes in elder care and elder finances. So that's also something you should do. Third, I also think it's important to do neurological testing, cognitive testing. It's important to go ahead and do that testing as soon as you start noticing those behaviors so that later when you test again, you have measurements across time and can gauge the progression of the illness. Of course, there aren't many assessments that are appropriate for deaf people. You know that, and that makes it tough. But I have heard of one neuropsychologist out west in Washington State or somewhere west whose name is Dr. James Wilson. I haven't met him or talked with him, but I have heard that this is his specialty. It might be worth reaching out to him for advice. He might be able to provide consultation to your hearing neuropsychologist regarding the testing of deaf people. It might be worth a try. And also, it's important to start developing a community of support. Don't keep the person hidden away. Dementia is not something that you need to be ashamed of at all. We need to start breaking through that stigma and talk about what's really going on. That the person is forgetting and showing symptoms. Start including their friends and the deaf community in that circle of support. Make sure that people know what's going on. Because if you keep it a secret and nobody knows, they may not understand behaviors that seem odd to them when they don't know what's wrong. They may confront the person and ask questions that are embarrassing or demeaning. It's important to let everyone know. I know that some families are more private and don't want people to know, but that means that you will be isolated and alone. No one else will know that information, so you won't have any support. It's important to build that community of support. And if you need more assistance with care, it's important to start thinking about who would be willing to be hired to come and help coordinate a companion service. Do you have deaf friends that you trust to visit with, to chat with, and to keep your family member company and engaged? That might be either a private pay or a volunteer arrangement. But start thinking about who you trust, whether they're deaf or hearing people that can sign. It's important to start developing that community of support. That's the most important thing. It's really crucial.
Those are great tips. Good information.
Also, another thing I just thought of too is that you might be thinking that you will never put your loved one in a nursing home, ever. That you can do it, you can take care of your family member. But I urge you to go ahead and get your family member's name on the waiting list of memory care homes. Not nursing homes, but specifically memory care homes, because they are trained specifically to care for people with dementia. So go ahead and get on several different waiting lists. Start looking for homes in your area. Are there any homes with deaf patients or deaf residents? If so, get on that waiting list. That doesn't mean that you have to commit to moving your family member into that home, but it's a backup plan if needed. And that's important.
Agencies like DSDHH trying to support families who are facing dementia. What advice would you give them?
It's important to note first that if families are contacting you, then obviously they are feeling nervous, stressed, and don't know what to do, right? You need to listen. That's most important. Just listen. I recommend that you make sure they contact an elder law attorney. That's important. And I already mentioned that earlier. But also, you might want to encourage them to start checking out what homes are available in their area and if there are any deaf residents in those homes. Find other members of the community that are going through the same experience and try to set up a network of support. Maybe your state or any other state could develop a resource list to develop networks of people who have gone through or are going through this experience now, and also people who have expertise in this area. Develop a list of people involved with this kind of topic and share it with each other. You could set up support groups. Also, it might be possible, but I know that many state employees must remain neutral and are not allowed to approach their legislators to find a sponsor for a bill. But you could discuss goals and plans for the future. You could start to rally people together to start thinking about how to find a sponsor for a bill for a needs assessment for your state. Because if the legislature approves a needs assessment for your state, including where there are gaps in services, and you have that documentation, it will obviously show that there are no services for deaf and hard of hearing senior citizens, for care and dementia, among other things. When it has been identified that there are no services, then the state becomes responsible for providing those services. I do encourage people to use their power and contact their local legislators to ask for support to draft a bill to make sure that the state does a needs assessment. Now, some people don't have the energy for that, and I understand. Some families are burned out and stressed, and I get it. That's just one idea of how you can mobilize people to change the system in your state. But for support, the key is developing a support network and maybe recommending resources, such as contacting Dr. James Wilson out west. It could be taking an idea like setting up a day program and pulling together a few deaf people with dementia. I'm sure in each state there are several deaf people with dementia, right? Maybe they seem hidden and are not known to each other because of privacy issues. I know it's hard, but if you can find out where they are and bring them together, that will start the development of that support network. It's hard because there are so many layers and so many issues, such as language access, appropriate testing, considering the language used, and there's so many others. But it's important to not wait and see how things go. Take action. Do something. Start testing. Start documenting what their behaviors look like. Start doing things little by little to keep moving things forward. Don't just become overwhelmed to the point of inaction. If you get an assessment done right away, then medication can be prescribed that will help stabilize their symptoms and slow the progression of their illness. So it's important to take action. Now, it's a hard question to answer because there isn't just one answer. There are several things one could do. It depends on each family's individual situation when determining what to do. It would be nice if each state had an expert on senior citizens specifically for the deaf community. That's my wish. It would be nice to have an expert that you could refer people to, someone who would have the knowledge and resources on all aspects of elder care. Again, it would be nice if each state had that type of position, but who knows if that's possible. It's hard because families do need a lot of support.
I agree with you. It's a very specialized field and it really requires a lot of knowledge. Someone like yourself sharing your tips and advice with us today. We're very fortunate to have you explain your journey and help us think about what caregiving entails. Thank you again for sharing your experience with us today. We've learned so much from you.
Thank you so much. Again, I really appreciate this opportunity to have this conversation. Talking about this topic is so important for my heart and my healing, for my mom, and for many other deaf people around the world. And also for deaf people who care for their parents too, whether they are deaf with deaf parents or deaf with hearing parents. Caregivers and people with dementia need a lot of support. So thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you so much for your time and participating in this interview. It was so beneficial.
Thank you. I appreciate it.